and I'm calling this episode Tuchinen, number 3. This is part of a 5-part series that we were doing. We started in the spring, earlier in the year, and then the ceremonial cycle come along and made us quit. We got busy and doing things, so now we're picking it back up. So we've already had 2 episodes, or two classes, and those are on that website also. And this time we're going to be talking about the effect of the Civil War on the Indians. This is the name of the text from this book that we're reading from. Just as a quick overview, Mary Haas was a linguist out of, she ended up her career at UC Berkeley. She came out of the East somewhere, so I forget where now. But anyway, she came into Creek Nation as one of her as a new doctorate to work in the field. And the field work she did was with the Creek Nation. And so she settled in at Eufaula and walked the 10 miles every day to Hannah and talked to James Hill. He was a member of the Hillubby Tribal Town. We call them today ceremonial grounds, but then they were actual, the Idulwas, the towns themselves. And he recited all of these stories in the language, in Creek, and she transcribed them. She didn't know do diddly about the language, because she's Stehetki, from back east somewhere. Tall Stehetki lady. I think I got pictures on the website somewhere. Anyway, so James Hill from Hillubby, I think Ernest Gouge was there at the time too. Yeah, he was. And these folks. So Ernest Gouge worked with John Swanton in the turn of the century, 1910, I think. Mary Haas came in the 30s, just before the war, or during the Depression, I mean. And she would walk to James Hill's house, and they would feed her and work on these texts all day long. And she'd go home and write them up in the evening and walk home to Eufaula, write them up, and then come back the next day. And they did that for a while, and her notes were never published, because as soon as she got done with this work, the Depression was just finishing up, I think, and I think the war came along. World War II came along, and she was called to service for the War Department to work on Thai language for the Philippines and all that Pacific theater that the United States was working on. So her activities got carried up with all these other activities, and she never did get her notes published until Jack Martin came along and worked on it. It's on. I just don't put it real close to me. It scares me. It's looking at me. So Jack Martin come along, and he's a linguist out of William and Mary in Virginia. He got his doctorate looking at the southeastern Muscogean languages, is what the linguists call it. So he looked at the whole area of languages, and Creek being the central part of that, he's focusing on Creek. And so he published this other book finally about it's a grammar reference book, so it's very, very technical, but he breaks down each of the pieces of words and things, and he doesn't know the language either, but linguists can come and do these things. They can study the language and do things with it. And then also that what they've done, those that know Margaret Malden and Jack Martin, they come and their first work they did in the language was producing this dictionary. And so all of this represents the body of work of basically Jack Martin. So Jack Martin got the charge, the duty was put on him by Mary Haas to see that her notes got published. And that's what he's done. I've had the photocopies of her original notes all these years, and when Jack and then finally got close to publishing this. I got all excited because I finally was able to get my notes, those notes out, the big old stack of books, about 20 books or so, for handwritten notes, and was able to see them in a coherent fashion. So it's more of a linguistic endeavor, and that's how Jack approached this, but it turns out that it can become a very good tool for us as learners, especially as we get into the future when we don't have those elders around that can be with us every day or whenever and they've gone on. Things like this will be able to help us bridge that gap and keep the language going. I work right now for the Citizen Potawatomis in Shawnee on their language program, and they have maybe one speaker here in Oklahoma. It doesn't stop us from doing the work that we need to do to produce material that people can learn from and bootstrap themselves back up and try to revitalize it, I guess. So most of the people that work in language work are in a revitalization effort. They're trying to make sure that the language continues and does things to keep it going. And that's what we do too. And that's part of what Jack has been doing, helping us with the revitalization and continuance of what we have left. So one of these days, the Creek language will come to that state where we'll have maybe a handful of fluent speakers left. I think back in the 90s, we probably estimated 3,000 to 5,000 speakers that could speak fluently. So how many years ago was that? Let's see, 2000, 2010, that's 20, 30, we'll say 30 years. That's 30 years ago. And most of those 3,000 to 5,000 speakers were elderly then. So how many do you think would be left today? You know, not very many of them. And in another 30 years, the ones that are left are still in that same boat because they're all now elderly too. And so we have a diminishing pool of speakers. And so the efforts that we are doing as a revitalization and continuance of the language is part of this effort today. So I spend a little bit of time. I give it lip service basically because we've had classes before. People have gone to different classes and things, and they've learned the alphabet. They've learned how to say a few words and things like that. The frustration for me as a learner at the time when we were learning it, we would come to the OCMA building when it was on the south side of town, and George Bunny was the teacher. He was a good teacher. He took us through several classes, and we'd get to a certain point and the series would stop. Then we'd start it all over again, the same series of words and classes, and we never got beyond a certain level, and that was always frustrating to me. And so it's been my goal to try and move us beyond those initial moments of learning or even teaching the class. I don't know the language fully. I'm not fluent, but I'm learning it. I'm a student of the language. We lived with my grandmother in Holdenville and then in Oklahoma City here when they helped start that Little Springs Church. So we came from Many Springs to the Little Springs as a daughter church. And they spoke the language all the time in the class. But when we moved here to Oklahoma City, my grandfather learned English along with us. So we was his help to get by in this world here in the city. But my mother never spoke it to us because she had gone to that same boarding school story where, they took it out of her, and so she never spoke. On her deathbed, she spoke, but other than that, she never did. So I had to learn the language all anew, and then taking George Bunny's and any other teachers that was out there's class, I had to figure out how to get beyond that. And the way I did that was go to OU where they started Creek classes with a speaker named Linda Alexander, if anybody knows her, out of Norman. And they were able to systematically divide or cut the language out or up and look at it in a scientific manner, in the realm of what they call linguistics. And that was so fresh and fascinating to me that I bought all in, and so I took all the linguistics courses they had and studied it and been in contact with all of these folks that along the way. And so my technique basically, or my style is more of a linguistic style, but we can still learn from that. And so this is an outgrowth of that. The first 2 classes, we looked at the text as they were, and what we found out from these texts, let me get back to those before I give an overview. What we find out from these texts are they were recorded by a native speaker back in the 30s, about times before that, so pre-statehood, maybe even all the way back to the Civil Wars. And this is actually the story that's told by that. I'm sure he wasn't alive at the time, but it was probably recited to him. So he was able to give a fairly good, I'm not sure exactly how old he was at the time Mary Haas came to him, but he may have been alive. So anyway, all of this, what this all does is it gives us a crystal clear view into the past, into our past. And we get to see through these stories how daily life was back in the day, and it's pure and good, and that's what's interesting and exciting about this text. Besides the language and the linguistics that's in there, there's a lot of cultural and what we call ethnographic information that we can pull from that we can use as modern learners. And that's what excites me about this material that's in here. He talks in one moment, he talks about building the pointed roof houses, those council houses that most of the grounds had. And he said there was one at Hillebby, but they never built it when we moved here. We moved to Oklahoma. So, those are things that we don't get to talk about very much or see much anymore. So I'm very excited about getting able to be able to talk about some of these things. So if we go beyond these 5 series of lessons, then I'm all in. But right now we've scheduled the 5. This is the 3rd one. The next one, next week, we're going to have one each week just to get through. Next week, and that material's on that website also, is going to be on the prayer, I think. The preaching and prayer thing. So I have some information on there about that. We'll look at it, and hopefully so that's why I brought my New Testament book out, so we can look at some of the words. And then the final class on the 28th will be over the little people. So we'll talk about spooky stuff. I want to hear everybody's spooky story, but we'll wait. So right now, currently, I teach up at OSU, and we have an online course called Muskogee Creek class. It's Muskogee 1 and Muskogee 2, 10-hour sequence that allows for the foreign language requirement for the state colleges. And we developed that course to not so much as to train people to be speakers, or because most of the students that we get nowadays are all steheki, but that's okay. Our goal in setting this course up that way, the way we have, is that we ignite a spark in somebody, and they can take the mantle and take the lessons and the learning and teaching further than we have, and so we just keep offering it over and over and over again, and it's online, so it can be done that way. I don't even have to go to the campus anymore. And again, all of that work that we do, any language worker that you see is doing it because we see pretty much the writing on the wall, and so it's our effort to this is how, I don't know, I'm sure they all have the same kind of thing. When it's my time to be judged, when they ask me, well, what have you done? And I'm going to say, I tried to do everything I could. I'm not going to have to go there and say, well, I wished I had done this, or I wish I had done that. And this effort here is part of that. It has caused me to not be able to settle down and be fluent, but that's okay. Yeah, I know enough of the underneath of it that my expertise, or my gift, I guess, would be to be able to explain all of that. And so hopefully that's what will come out of these lessons that we pulled out of this book. Any questions?
We missed the first 2 classes,
Mm-hmm.
so is there any paperwork?
Yeah, it's on that website. You'll see lesson 1 and lesson 2, the text of it. So, and I have the PowerPoints, and I haven't put those up yet because I haven't got the audio to link with it yet. But when I do, or they've recorded them, but they haven't done the edit on them yet. So eventually there will be material rehashing these same classes over and over again. And that's the beauty of what we're doing is we're archiving and presenting this so that it can be presented again and again and again, and then people can do it from where they want.
Someone online asked, what does Halebi mean?
Halebi, we always talk about that every time we gather up, and it turns out that we're not real certain, but it has a feel of a word named of quick, to be quick, like in the water. Like Hilepki. When your grandparents or somebody says, "Lebejages," do you ever hear them tell you that? Hurry up. It means in that fashion, kind of quick. What's interesting, whoever asked that, what's interesting about some of the words that we have from our homelands, we'll call them, they're very descriptive and they're very accurate into the area that they come from. So, for instance, Wetumpka, Alabama. If you go down there, and most of the towns have that "we," so they're associated with some kind of water. And Wetumpka kind of says falling water. When you go to the river where Wetumpka is, in the middle, and the rocks there are slanted like this, or flat slabs in the river, and that water just rolls right over them, and then you can hear that falling kind of thing. It's really fascinating. What's interesting about all that is in any kind of word that we have from our old country, a place name especially, it gives an exact description of where you are. I always tell people when I'm in the old country, when I'm in the homelands, I see these names for places, it tells me exactly what was there, and I'm never lost because they still have the names, the same names for a lot of those creeks and towns, and it's really fascinating. So when we moved here, we brought those same names over, but they don't have the same connection as they do in the homeland. So that's a long way to answer that question about the Halebi name. At Halebi Creek, or in Halebi Creek, you can see where the water, it's fairly thin creek. Most of the creeks in Alabama and Georgia are real creeks. They're deep, not like the sandbars that we have here. We got sold a bag of beans when we bought these creeks that we thought were the same as homeland creeks. Anyway, the Halebi Creek is really wide and narrow, and it flows. It's real thin. It flows on these rocks really fast. It's really kind of interesting to stand in that water and let it just. Anyway, so I can imagine where that name came from, if that's what it means. And so it's the same way with who we call ourselves, Muskogee. I see that David used the new terminal, or the new way of spelling it, I guess the way they're doing it down in OU.
Yeah.
And but if we don't have a full feel of what that word means. Has anybody heard what Muskogee means? Most names for themselves of people, most people have a name for themselves, and it's the people, like the Dene, the Navajo people. That Dene, it means people. And our name for people is Isti, but we don't call ourselves Isti. We call ourselves Muskogee, Isti Muskogee. So the feel for that is, Elder told me that is the fact that we would gather up in tight groups in the homelands. We had these vast cane breaks where we got our river cane, where we got all of our building materials and materials to live by. And those were good places to gather up and protect. So another term that kind of goes along that way is Ishpogogi Toyes, is on the last or on the end or whatever. And what that really means, Catherine Braun out of Auburn, she studies the Southeast because she's down there and on a history side, but she seems to think that's a different meaning of word, like it's the last one. And we use that as that term in the song, Spogires. But what it really means is this is where we stop. We're taking our stand right here, much like we did the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. That Tohopeka was the place where they decided, this is it, this is where we're going to gather up. And so that fits kind of like with this term Muskogee fits with. So anyway, it's really interesting. All of that all those kind of questions are good. So whoever asked it, thank you. Give me a chance to talk about the old country. I always like to talk about the old country. All right. So those first two classes are on there. The text is, I haven't got the slides up, and they'll be making a video presentation of all of that eventually, but they haven't done it yet. Red Stick Warrior Association. And my goal is just to present the material, and whoever can gather from it, gain from it, that's good. I always start out with the caveat, and on the website you'll see it. I give you this information's rich. It's very thick and rich, and so there's layers upon layers that we can discover from that. We can look at history, we can look at storytelling, look at folk tales, we can look at lifeways, we can look at language, we can look at linguistics. There's a whole bunch of things that we can gather from these. And it's up to us individually to peel away what we feel is important for that. So if you want to learn how to speak the language, fortunately, some of the texts have audio recordings from Margaret Molden reading them. So I think this one is one that has a recording with it. And question?
Yeah, Jeremy just told me both those videos are available on the website.
Okay. So maybe they'll post the link up for us so that we can find it. So yeah, that's good to hear that they're up there. So there is no excuse for you to say, "Oh, I missed the first two classes," right? Because now they're on the video, not on the internet. So, oh, yeah.
Is it on a website or?
Yeah, so redstickwarriors.com.
Okay, it's on now.
Yeah, not on the Facebook. The Facebook is just a link to the website.
Okay, well, that's the only, oh, you have to go to the internet then to get it. Okay.
Yeah. And Facebook is part of the internet too, so.
Well,
Most people just live on Facebook, and I barely know how to do Facebook. So my caveat behind all of this is it's up to you to unpack it. We give you a few tools, but we're banking on the fact that you've gone through these other classes. So we want to try and put to use all of that knowledge that you may have that's maybe bouncing around and maybe tie it together. So that's what we're trying to do. Oh, scared me. So this is the first set of text that comes out of this. And I'll just run through this real quick. I want to get back to some other lesson I have at the back end of this slide. But I want to get through the text just so that we can see how these are organized. And so the title of it was of this piece of text that's out of here is The Effect of the Civil War on the Indians. And this is by James Hill, and then Mary Haas has got her information in the bracket there. It's out of book 4, notebook 4 that she had, in pages 127 through 141. If I had known we were so many new people, I would have brought that book for you to look at the way she wrote it in linguistic form. And so the next line, so there's 3 lines to these readings. First is the Creek spelling, the Creek way of writing it. The second line is the phonemic or the linguistic writing. And the last line is the free. No, there's 4 lines usually. The first line of English is the pretty much word by word translation, and the last line is the free translation, the way it's supposed to mean, what it's supposed to mean. So, can anybody read that first line? WVCEN. So we have to think about what the alphabet sounds are and how they play out. Well, first thing that we always tell people is to know those sounds. We know the W is a regular W, and then the V is a sound, and C is a ch, and the E is an E sound, the N is an N sound, and that V again is a. So that first word comes out, and we break it into syllables. So the syllable breaks is it would be WV syllable, CE syllable, NV. Or some people will put CEN as one syllable and then V by itself. It really doesn't matter. So we go wa, and then chin or chi, and then na. Wachina. What is that?
So word for the English people.
Washington. Wachina is people for a name for Washington. Then the next one, how would you say that one? So the break would be LE, and then PV, P, and then LE, and then KEN. Lee, and then the P makes kind of a B sound. But every other sound except for maybe the K is a G. Or every other sound is like we just covered or like they are in English. So the L's like English. Republican. So it's Republicans. So, and then we know isti lusty, right? Oh, I meant to read that. But anyway, isti lusty, we know what that means. So what happens is once we can learn how to sound these out, breaking them into syllables and things, we can go to the dictionary and look up some of these words if we don't know what they are. Of course, they give them here, so you don't have to really look too far. But when we get to the verbs, and we'll do one, we're going to break some of these verbs down and see what they come up with the meaning. So isti lusty, we find, if we look it up, means what? Black-skinned or black person. There's 2 ways of saying it. People always say isti lusty, black person, because person is isti. Or a lot of people say na lusty, ina lusty, black-skinned, na lusty. And then of course, we shorten it today and we just say stilusty.
I'm sorry, this there was like man.
Isti, yeah. And then pujas sigo. Sigo means none. Pujas is master. So it's no masters. Hayada is to make, and iagen is to want. So if we read that all together, we say, Wachina, Republican, Isti, Lusty, Puja, Sigo, Hayada, iagen. And we see that in the phonemic form down below, which says Wachina, Republican, and of course they use the P as a, but it has the B sound mainly. Istilasti puja sigo hayada iajan. And it said the English, the English translation then says the U.S., which is for Wachina, Republican Party, and then it says Negroes and the no owners, puja sigo, to make they want it. So that's word for word. And so then it switches around. And what we find out when we look at sentence structure of Creek, the verb is at the end. And so the English, the bottom English, we put that iagen, that verb that's part of this, in the middle of that. And so the free translation comes out. The United States Republicans wanted to free the Negroes and made war, and then it continues, that sentence actually continues. So war is hothi, is hai, makes with, Ishfulidi, it's they were long ago. Heathka is good. Hagof, it was made again. And Wachinat, again, that's Washington. Idin Fachidin, that means agreed together. Fachida is to agree, or Idi is together. Idin Fachidin, so that's make peace. They come together to make peace. So with those two sentences, I'm going to glean a little bit out of this from just from looking at the history side of it. Does that make sense? I'll read the free translation. It says, the United States Republicans wanted to free the Negroes, made war, and when peace came, the United States, and then making treaties. So does that make sense? The United States Republicans wanted to free Negroes. Do you think Republicans would do that today?
No.
Well, if you think about the reason for the Civil War, and it was this slavery, anti-slavery, or pro-slavery and anti-slavery. North was for freeing the slaves, and the South was wanting to keep them. What's interesting is today we see Southern areas more conservative, more Republican. We call them Republicans today, right? More conservative, more of the style that we associate with that. But I think back in Abraham Lincoln's time, the name Republican didn't mean what it does today. I think it was more of the Democrat side. Is that right? Somebody know from history? Is that right?
Yeah.
So it switched. So at this time, when he's talking about the Republicans were more the Democratic side than it is today. And I don't think the Democrats were called Democrats, and they were called something else. Earlier it was like Whigs and Tories, but I'm not sure about this time period, Abraham Lincoln's time.
Freeman? No.
No,
That was further back.
yeah. But Republicans at this time, during the Civil War, were more democratic nature, like we understand today as democratic, more anti-slavery. So it's really interesting. If you just read it on the top, you think, oh, okay. But if you think about it, well, Republicans today they'd be like this. They'd be the ones that want to keep the slaves. So there's a lot of information, and that's one of the things I like about this is we can glean all kinds of information out of these texts if we just look at them and dig down. So here I separated out a little bit more just to look at each of the words. And I'll sound this out in the syllable break so that you can hear it. Wachina li publican isti lusty pujas sigo hayada iajin hothi. Both R's have to be pronounced. Hothi is hayi is fulidi hithka hagof Wachina Watchinut, Edin Futchidin. Both C's have to be pronounced. Edin Futchidin. Isti Jardin in Hayat Omat. Isti Jardit Idulwat. Futchi. Futchi. And that H has to be pronounced. Futchi chit. A little huh. Futchi chit. Anybody want to attempt that? Not yet? Again, it's on the website, and I have Margaret's recording of it tied to it so you can listen to it while you read it and verify. That's what we're doing. And I'm not selling you a bag of beans, magic beans. So here we have some more. And I'm not going to go over the whole text just because I want to get to some couple other activities. Oh, and then I'm going to run out of time, actually. So, Isti Lusty, Nizi Yadi. So they marked the long E with the bar over it. Nizi Yadi. Ahanupsi Isyomat. Idalwa Dazikeya Toyayat. Idipoman Dazikeyat Omathin. Abohi Togon. Isti Lusty Puyajis. Marget. Isti Muskogee Idalwat. Iem Obanayiban. M.O. Agasahmet. Got to put that H in there. Agasahmet. Isti Lusty Niziyadi. Ahanupsi Isyomat. Idalwa Dazikeya Toyayat. Idapomin Dazikeyat. Yeah. Omathin Abohi Togon Isti Lusty Puyajis. Marget. Isti Muskogee Idawat. Iem Obanayiban. M.O. Agasahmet. And you see the English of it. It's as though they were not asking for it. We want the Negroes that we bought together with their descendants to be citizens just like those of us who are citizens of the nation, they said. And the Muskogee Nation, Isti Muskogee Idowa, Muskogee Nation, discussed the matter and approved it. So there's the breakdown of that. So this is part of the slide presentation. I broke the text down a little bit, and just to make it a little bit easier to break apart. So we can put the syllable breaks in and sound out each of the syllables. So as we're learning how to do this, and this is a task for you. Those that have anybody have the Creek First Reader, the old one? I think I have a scanned copy. I'll put it up on that website also. In that section, and it's something that a lot of classes do. They teach you the phonetics, how to sound out the syllables, and they have a syllable breakdown of how to sound these out. It's always a good practice to learn how to do that. Then you can sound the TV, and then we say it as T-U-H, duh, or D-U-H, duh. Z, S-E is Z-E, K-V-Y, Kaya, Kaya, does it Kaya? And then we say O, M, and then thin. So we learn how to sound out each of those syllables. And the utility or the benefit from doing this is, again, it gives you practice on how to say some of these and see it and hear it in your mind's inner ear. And then if you can compare it with somebody that's actually speaking it, then you can get closer to that and then have a better feel for it. You may not know what it is you're talking about, but with the help of a dictionary, like I said, you can look up most of these words. They're individual words. The only problem that you'll have is when you come to a verb generally, because verbs in Creek and most native languages are very rich and dense and have all kinds of information packed into them. So I'm not going to read all of this, except to say, oh, one of my things that I like to do is I like to count in Creek. How many people can count? How far can you count? Let's see. Hokolin, Tuchinen, Oston, Jakeben. Somebody continue? Eboggin, Coolaboggin, Chinnaboggin, Ostaboggin, Ballin. Then so I always say this is the base 5 number system that the Creeks have. Some tribes have a base 20, you know, they use all their, or base 10 basically. Most people do base 10 because they have 10 digits. But some people have base 20 where they use their toes too, and so they count in groups of 20. But we count in groups of 5. So we started that first 5, Humgen, Hokolin, Tuchinen, Oston, and then Jakeben, and then say Eboggin. Eboggin means 1 added on to the hand. Coolaboggin, 2 added on to the hand. Chinnaboggin from Tuchinen, 3 added on to the hand. Ostaboggin from Oston and Boggin, 4 added on to the hand. So we're using that base 5 as repeating it over and over again. So the same thing happens then when we get into the upper digits. Ballin, Humgendalagen. And so we're saying Ballin, which is 10, and 1 added on to that. Humgen, and then Dalagen is adding it on. Ballin, Hokolokagen. Okagen is adding it on. 2 or more. Adding them together. So it's Ballin and 2 added on. So Ballin Humgendalagen, Ballin Hokolokagen, Ballin Tuchinokagen, Ballin Ostokagen, Ballin Jakibokagen. Then we start that Eboggin and stuff over again. Ballin Ebokagen, Ballin Coolabokagen, Ballin Chinnabokagen, Ballin Ostabokagen, Bali Hokolin Humgendalagen, Bali Hokolin Hokolokagen. So we start that pattern over and over again. We can count to infinity. I'm halfway there. That's a joke for whoever knows what infinity is. I need my little rim shot person over here. So anyway, there's a number here, and it says, I'll read it. It says, Otholobi, Chukbi Thakko Humgin, Chukbi Chinnaboggin, Pali Eboggin, Ebokaga, Oven. That's how we would say that year, 1868. Oh, 66. So at the end of the war. So we have Eboggin, Ebokaga at 66. 6 with 6 added on. Okagat. And Pali Eboggin, that's what it is. Pali Eboggin at 60, and then Ebokaga at 6 added on, so that's 66. Then we have Chukbi Chinnaboggin, and Chukbi is our word for 100. So there's 8 100s. Chinnaboggin is 8. 8 100s, and then Chukbi Thakko is our word for 1,000. And if you look at the old dictionary, it goes up to millions and stuff like that. It's really cool. Chukbi Thakko Ajuli or something like that, I think is what 100,000 or a million is. So that's saying 1,000 for Humgen Chukbi Thakko, and then Chinnaboggin, Chukbi Chinnaboggin is 800, and then Pali Eboggin is 60, and Ebokagat is 6 added on. So we can continue. So what would be, this is a test, what would be 1867 be? The next year after this. Chukbi Thakko, go ahead.
It would be the same except for where you say Ebokagen, it would be probably
Coolabokagat. So how would you say it? All together. Get your slobber ready, because it's going to be slobbery. Chukbi Thakko Humgen, Chukbi Chinnaboggin, Bali Ibagan Gulabokagat. So anyway, I love to count. Like I said, I'm halfway to infinity right now. Every time I get just right in that area, I forget and I have to start all over again. So I'm hoping I won't forget where I left off. So there's a lot of information in these, and so let me just look at their the English a minute. So we talked about the date in 1866. They made the Negroes were part of the Creek Nation for that treaty. We're not entitled, and the Indians were split. Oh, he calls them Democrats here, so maybe they were called Democrats back then. It's interesting. Yeah, because that's what it says, Republican victory, because they didn't want the trading and selling of Negroes. So it flipped from what it used to be.
I keep wanting to say Estejati instead of Istejati.
Istijati, Well, you know, and of course today we just say Stajati. We drop off that E. Stajati. Let's see here. So he's talking about the war and the treaty and divisions and fights. And so here it says, for 6 years, the horses that were left, they ran away and became wild, so nobody knew where they were, and they became public property. So anyone who chased after a wild horse and caught it could claim it for some until all were gone. So he says there was a lot of lawlessness during the Civil War. If you remember history, the Creeks were asked to fight for both sides. You know, there was a group that was asked to fight for the South, and then the people that wanted to stay neutral. Do you know which groups those were? The ones that wanted to stay neutral were the followers of Hobitha-Yahola. They didn't want to be involved in the white man's war, so they didn't really, you know, mess with it too much. They tried to stay away. But the other ones, usually the lower Creeks, the McIntosh groups and stuff like that, they had slaves. So they had a vested interest. So they sided with the South, and they said they represented the whole Creek Nation when they made treaties with the Southern generals or Southern president, I forget his name, Jefferson Davis. And so when they saw that there was this group that didn't want to have anything to do with it, they tried to attack them and force them into doing something. And so they banded up, Hobitha-Yahola banded everybody up, and they escaped to Kansas. And he died there in Kansas in the winter because part of the removal treaty, so we're operating off of the removal treaty of 1832, but as the war goes on. So part of the removal treaty was that the United States would protect us from outsiders and encroachments and danger, I guess. So they took that to heart, and they fled from Sand Springs, went across the river at Sand Springs and on up, and went to one of the forts there in Kansas. I forget the name of it. And they went there to the United States and said, "Here we are, protect us." But they weren't ready to protect them. So they got there was no food, there was no blankets, and winter was coming, and it was very rough. So they didn't help them, and a lot of people died up there. Hobitha-Yahola, one of them. Here in Indian Territory, in the Creek Nation here in Oklahoma, the area was devoid of people because Hobitha-Yahola and his group, the isolationists, I guess, or pacifists, wanted to go be out of the way of all of this, so they went up north. And the Southerners the Southern sympathizers, went south on the Texas Trail, Highway 69. You know where that is? It goes by Durant and all that. They call that the Texas Trail, all the way up through Muskogee. Cattle were driven on that from Texas up to Kansas. It's like the Chisholm Trail on this side of the state. But so they went down and they settled in Denison, Texas, and stayed there for the duration of the war. So there was nobody left basically here in the home in Indian Territory, and things got messed up and tore up, and it caused for suffering when they had to come back and repopulate all of these towns and things like that. So anyway, he talks about some of that stuff here, and talks about fraudulently doing rolls and things like that, and that's always been a contention with the freedmen that are part of our tribe. So I won't go into that too much anymore. I'll go down. I want to see where. Oh, here we go. So after 7 years, I won't read the Creek. Again, the Creek Nation was divided, and there was a time when they made the war, before the Negro War, the Indians had two chiefs. One chief was called the Canadian River Chief, and one's called the Arkansas River Chief. And when peace returned after the United States and the Indians made a treaty, in that year, they made a constitution providing for just one chief, which we have today, basically. But what's interesting is we call our chief today, what do we call him? We don't call him chief. Well, I mean, no, the one we elect, not those. Floyd, James Floyd now, what do we call him? Principal chief. Principal chief. What does that mean? It goes back to this idea here where we had two chiefs. In our homelands, we didn't have a centralized government, and that was a great concern for the United States. They wanted to make treaty with one group, and we weren't one group. But we did have an upper division and a lower division, upper creeks and lower.
Principal would be the main chief, right?
Now, that's what we call them, yeah. But in that time, the two chiefs of the both divisions, upper creeks and lower creeks, they were just two chiefs. They were equal. Miko Abokta is what we call them. They were twins. And that goes back to even further back into mythology and archaeological times. I can't even say that. We find these shell gorgets and things, and we see these two beings on these shells, and they're twins. And we have stories about the hero twins. And it goes back to that moment, or that time where we had two twins, two people that were equal in stature. And then we get to this modern time, and of course this idea that the United States wants one person or one head, so they force on us that idea of the principal chief. And we de-elevate so much our second chief. And we really don't have to do that, but we unconsciously do that today. We make the second chief a lesser person than the principal chief by using those terms. But if we stuck to our old ways like we did when we got here, up until this Civil War, then we would have been doing what we did forever, for thousands of years probably. So, I'll run out of time. I got to keep going. I keep seeing things I want to talk about, but I'll move on here. And so we can look at all of these, and of course, like I said, the recording's on there, so you can follow the recording. And see what you can gain from that. But this is what I want to move to. So Spahetchi, so he goes through Civil War all the way up through Spahetchi's time, what the history calls Green Peach War. And time and time again, so this is the last statement I'll say about this text, and we'll move on to some other things. Time and time again, we have this division amongst ourselves that we're probably not aware of today, but it's still there. And it was the basis of what the Chitoharjo, the Crazy Snake movement, was about. Anybody know what that was about?
Was resistance to the allotment.
holding to the, holding, it's almost like the nativistic movement at Tecumseh started with us in the old country, going back to the old ways. And so what they wanted to do and what these guys are doing in history throughout is go back to that old treaty. They were wanting the United States to stick to their promise. As long as the grass grows and the river flows and the sun shines, we'll have this land. We'll abide by that. And so everybody in this division here, the struggles that we've been having and still have probably today, want to go back to that time where they want them to honor that first agreement. But of course, the United States will come along and say, spoils of war or whatever, and they want to rewrite everything and change everything. And I tried to get A.D. Ellis to do it, but he wouldn't do it because it's going to be a long battle if we ever did. I was wanting him to go and sue for this new treaty, this 1866 treaty, saying it's illegal. I'll bet we could win. Ooh, we'd get the whole state back, the whole country. Anyway, that's my last thing I'll say about all that. But so if we see these sorts of things and think about it, our history has been guided by these kinds of issues for a while now. It just didn't start or end with Chittoharjo. In the back of the dictionary, the old dictionary, and I have a scan of that on my website too. They have a verb breakdown. So if we look at one of these verbs, let me find one real quick here. That one's a good one. She wants the, he wants the in them omens and it. Oh. I want to find a good one that we can dissect. Well, if we see the verbs, they're usually at the end. Abayet at the top here. Omadi dos. Fik honi. There we go. That's a good one. This one right here. Fik honi badi dos. So the base of that verb is fik honida, to quit or stop. But there's extra things that are on there, and usually there's things in front of these verbs. But on the back end, there's different things that you can add to make for tenses and things. And that's what's explained in this this document at the end here. It's in the back of that old dictionary. Again, I have that on the website, so you can download it and look at the back. And it breaks down how to use this verb here, which would be at the end of the sentence, to hit. So nafkida is to hit, and then we run it through its first, second, and third person forms, singular and in plural. And we say nafgas, that I makes the A sound. Nafgitskis, you hit. Nafkis, he hits. Nafkis, we hit. Nafgatskis, you all hit. Nafguggies, they hit. Those people over there. And then there's the tenses that come with it. So we, on that last line over there, the unks, you see unks on all of them? That's a past tense marker. That says he hit somebody a month ago maybe, or yesterday or something, 2 weeks ago. So nufgayunks, I hit somebody 2 weeks ago. Nufgitskunks, you hit somebody 2 weeks ago. Nufgunks, he hit somebody 2 weeks ago. Nufgiyunks, we hit somebody 2 weeks ago. So these are things that we can add to these verbs to change them around. And that's what you see when you see full text. You see the verbs in in all of their complex glory. And so this chart, these breakdowns in the back of the dictionary goes through all of those different forms of things that you can add to them. And of course, the old dictionary was written in the 1880s or so, or 70s even. So they use a different terminology about what was a perfect definite and those sorts of things, or pluperfect and all that. We don't use those too much anymore, but it gives you an idea of how the language was broken down by these missionaries when they came to us. And in breaking it down, they could build it back up and use these words and change them around how they need to. And we see the evidence of how that's used in these texts. So I always encourage people to go back and look at these and see if we can see some of the meanings in the back, in the actual writing somewheres. Most of what we hear in spoken word and talking about these things, we always hear it in the weighties or the nomats. When you hear people speak, they always use those forms. The if and the may kind of thing, kind of and that kind of harks back to a linguistic phenomenon of a worldview that we have as Muskogee people. Muskogee people don't force their views on anybody, or anything, and so we always put things in couch them in terms of maybes, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I may have struck you, or I'm not sure if I was hodged up by then, so I don't know. So if you do that to me, then I'm going to hit you back. So anyway, we hear and that these forms right back here are generally what we would hear in regular speech. It's really kind of neat how we do that. Then we have the passive voice. A lot of this we hear in the formal speech patterns. Ceremonial speech is generally a lot of times written or spoken in this form, passive voice. Oh, okay. So let's see here. Getting close here. So we go over here to, can you see that? Yeah. So what am I looking at right here? Somebody tell me, what's the title of it at the top? Can you see that at the top? Let me zoom it in. This is out of the New Testament now. What's that first line up there? I mean, that big writing. Can somebody say it? I'll help you. Obanaga, Hetha. What's that next one? Luke Choyadi. Choyadi means written or wrote. He wrote it. Who wrote it? Luke. It's the word according to Luke. Obanaga Hetha is the good word or the preachings. All right. So I want us to look at, we don't have to read it, but I just want you to look at some of it. And number 19 says, can you read that? Or do I need to make it bigger? Let me make it bigger. Number 19 says, Momes, Janet, Hilot, Dila, Idijaka, Phila Bi Hewat, Hilodidos, Athakan moment not Hulwagi, Momi Jadi, O Mogan im Azivho. So we see, well, I'll leave it up to you. We see that, and then let's see here. 23 says, Momen, what? Huh? Jesus. 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 It says, Momen, Jesus im ajulga dot otholabi, and here's a number, otholabi is year. Bali tuchina mahin. So Bali tuchina would be 3 tens or 30. Mahin, othida ali jadis. What's this next word? Somebody sound it out. Joseph. Ipuji komhoyen moment mat hili ipujit moment. John, Joseph. Let's see here. Number 27. Oh, I'm going to turn it the wrong way. Mut. Jonah. So what do we think's going on? There's ipujit all the way through those. Melki ipuji, Meditheus ipuji, Neam ipuji, Miethi ipuji, Semie ipuji, Judah ipujit, Joseph ipujit, Koza ipujit, Elmoda ati. Oh, let's see, I have to move over. Ipuji means son. So let's see, where am I? I'm at the top yet? Not yet. Okay, there we go. Josie, Jolam, Levi, Semia, Joseph, Elegam. How about that T-E-W-E? T-E-W behind, just above 32 there. D-E. What do you think that is? David. Boaz, Nieza, Judah, Jonan, Joseph. No. This is Luke. This is Luke now. And their sons. What do you think's going on? Genealogy. So what does Luke do? He gives Jesus' background, his pedigree. So he's going from all the way back through David and going all the way down to Adam. So he's reciting all of his ancestors all the way back. Ezekiel, Thela, I don't know all of these names, but Methuselah, Canaan. So my point about all of this is you can take something like this and sound it out, look up few of the words, and you can figure out what's going on, especially when they use the same kind of names that represent what we know as in English, Ezekiel or Jonah, things like that. So when we do that, we find out that this is a genealogy that's being presented in this, and then you can go look at the actual verses in Luke's chapter 4, verse whatever these are, and follow it. So the whole point of the exercise is to use what you've been given from past classes or whatever we give in this class or whatever they have on their website, and try to expand from where you are. Go outside your comfort zone. Practice and try to do these things. Pretty soon you'll pick up one or two words and one or two things. Even if this is the only thing you get out of this, at least you can look at it and sound it all out, and at least sound like you know something. That's what I do.
What's that MBT stand for?
Mutt.
Mutt?
That. Mm-hmm. So, that is my talk today. All right, any questions? Again, these are rich and full of good information. And like I said, I put up snippets of it so I stay out of the copyright legality of it. But I put the first part of the book where it gives all of the names of the stories and stuff. So if anybody's interested in them, then just let us know, and I'll put them up as additional material or something. But see, that's the dictionary that I have up there. The old, what I call the old dictionary. Yeah. So all of that information is at the back here in these charts.
I have that middle one
Uh-huh.
at home, but I'm not good in English, so I don't know what that means, computer means and all that.
Yeah. So yeah.
I was an English major, and I taught medical terminology,
Mhm.
which is Latin,
Mhm.
and Greek.
Mhm.
And you have your prefixes and your suffixes, and then it's kind of messed up too. So hopefully that will help me.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Just remember that they don't in the dictionary. To present a dictionary properly, you strip the word down to its base form. So it doesn't have any of those things that you added on. Those tenses, those persons, those idiom. The edi part. Edi means together. Anything edi. Edi no kejida is love for all, together. We love together. Edi no kejida. Those things are not generally on those words because for a dictionary, you just need to have the basic form so you can get a basic definition of it. And then to use it in a sentence, then you have to add all these other things on what we just saw and what you're talking about. So go ahead.
Can I grab that linguistic book and look at it for just
Yeah. Interesting thing, especially since you brought it up a bit. I just come back from a visit to Italy, and Italy is a Latin. The Romance languages are Latin languages, and Italian is a really close.
to Spanish?
Well, to Latin. It's the first language out of Latin, so it's really close. So when you look at Latin and Italian now, we see the same kinds of structures in this language. So that really helped me when I was in Italy. I said, okay, I can understand what they're saying. I can hear this piece and I can hear that part. I just need to figure out what this other part was. And they just used them over and over again, and I could get around in Italy fairly easily just because I have a understanding how these are broken down. And when the missionaries came to decipher and write the dictionary, that's what they used. They used their Latin and Greek base to make this. So it wasn't a big jump for them to do all of this, to catch it.
Is that hard to find?
I have it online. You can download the book. I'm trying not to burn any more trees than I have to. They might need them up in North Dakota or South Dakota, wherever.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Hopefully, this was interesting, and next week we'll talk about how to pray, and so we'll look at some of the formal structure of the language and how it comes out in sermons, and maybe I have some ceremonial oratory that was published out, and I'll try to put those up online too. And we'll look at that and maybe some song structure, just in that church thing. But what's really interesting, so if you get a chance to read the prayer stuff for next time, that'd be great, because I want to ask if anybody had experience with any of that.
Kizzy wanted to lead a hymn.
There you go.
I'll sing with you.
That's me. What I do is whenever I talk I have to go to a funeral tomorrow, and I'll talk and I'll say these things, then I'll start a song, but I can't finish them. So I'll start it, and I'll have somebody already picked out, and they'll continue after I step down. But I like it when they start the song and they're still talking. I like that when they talk over it. That just blows me away, and I like to do that. Anyway, I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm done. Mado, what you guys, Jay?